Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize profusely for my tardiness. I have no excuse other than pure cerebral derailment. This time I'd like to call the Newburgh Planning Commission to order. And can we get a roll call, please?
Randy Rickert,
Here.
Jason Dale,
Here.
Lady Quinn,
Here.
Abby Seitz,
Here.
Chris Wright, Linda Newton Curtis, and Jose Vallapando is absent.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'd like to open the public record for any comments that are not to do with anything on the agenda for the evening. Okay, seeing none, move on to the consent calendar. Do we have any motions for approving the Planning Commission meeting minutes for the September meeting?
I move to approve the September Planning Commission.
Very well.
minutes.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Very well. I have a motion and a second. Can I just get a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. Motion passes. The Planning Commission meeting minutes for September 12th are approved. Moving on, we have a quasi-judicial public hearing for the CUP-240003, small animal pet rescue at 514 East First Street. And at this point, I'd like to call for abstentions, bias, ex parte contact, and objections to jurisdiction. Well, hearing none, and we'll move on to the legal announcement. Commissioner Seitz.
ORS 197.763 requires certain statements to be made at the commencement of a public hearing. The applicable city and state zoning criteria must be listed. This means that we must advise you of the standards that must be satisfied by the applicant prior to our approval of an application. The planning staff will list the applicable criteria during his or her presentation of the staff report. Persons wishing to participate in this hearing must direct their testimony or evidence towards the criteria stated by the planner or other specific city or state criteria which you believe apply. You must tell us why the testimony or evidence relates to their criteria. Any issue which might be raised in appeal of this case to the Land Use Board of Appeals must be raised in person or by letter at the local level prior to the city approving or denying the application. The law states that the issue must be raised in enough detail to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond. This part of the law is also known as a raise it or waive it requirement. If you do not bring it up now, you cannot bring it up at the Land Use Board of Appeals. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or any other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in enough detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing on an application, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission will grant such a request through the continuance or extension of the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Seitz. Moving on to the staff report.
Good evening, Commission. I'm Leanne Wagner, one of the assistant planners for the city. And tonight I will be presenting the case for a conditional use permit at 514 East First Street. I enter the entire staff report for CUP 24-0003 into the record. The applicant for this request is Daria Veenstra. Her request is to relocate her ARC Pet Rescue, currently operating out of 814 East 2nd Street, to the leased space at 514 East 1st Street. The zoning for this area is C3, the Central Business District, and the applicable code sections for review of her request can be found in 15.225.060 and 15.225.100 of the Newburgh Municipal Code. This next slide is an aerial image of the building where the leased space is located, showing its frontage along East First Street and its adjacency to South Howard and South College Streets. Next are clips from the zoning map showing the building's context within the central zoning district, and likewise its adjacency to the high-density residential zone to the north and south, and the medium-density residential zone further south as well. The utilities map shows that the building is already connected to all major utility services necessary for operations at the leased space. When looking at the criteria under which to assess the request by the applicant, we find the code sections mentioned. Importantly, criterion 15.225.060A in regard to the character of the leased space and ARC operations in relation to the rest of the business district. The renovations will activate the building, bringing the currently vacant space into use for ARC operations and community members. Applicant has also emphasized a dedication to hygiene practices and noise mitigation that will be implemented daily. And the anticipated pedestrian and vehicular activity is in keeping with other businesses downtown. To satisfy criterion 15.225.060B, it is noted in the application materials that proposed improvements are aimed at creating a boutique-style space that is inviting for community members. Likewise, the project promotes a diversified and vibrant business core with a focus on community engagement. Lastly, this section states in criterion C that the proposed use will be consistent with this code, and this includes section 15.225.100, which we will look at next. For criterion 15.225.100A, we see that the applicant must exercise their conditional use permit, if approved, in order to be effective. Also, that the director may grant an extension for up to 6 months if requested in writing prior to the expiration under the conditions listed. The applicant understands these requirements. In conclusion, staff is recommending that the commission move to adopt Planning Commission Order 2024-08 with conditions approving conditional use permit CUP 24-0003 for a small animal pet rescue located at 514 East First Street, Yamhill County Tax Lot R3219AA 10500. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Do we have any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. And we'll move on and we will open the record for public testimony. There'll be a 5-minute time limit per speaker with 15 minutes for the applicant and primary opponent. And we will go do the applicant, other proponents, opponents on undecided, and then any chance for rebuttal. And we'll start with the applicant, which I believe is Mrs. Veenstra. Please step up to the mic there, hit the button, and tell us your name and address for the public record. Yes.
Hi guys, I'm Daria Veenstra and I'm the Executive Director of ARC Pet Rescue. Yep. Next slide. So we are a 501c nonprofit business benefiting homeless animals in our community. We've been operating in Newburgh since 2020 and we've helped over 2,000 animals since we began. Majority of those have been from our Yamhill County. What we hope to bring to First Street, our goal here is to create a fun, interactive space for visitors to come relax and spend time with adoptable pets. We'll have a free roaming cat room. We hope to host movie nights with cats for children, including possibly reading nights with the cats. In our main lobby, we can host events, birthday parties, feature artists, and host pet adoption events for our rescues and hoping to include other rescues as well. We want to have this be a place of rest for those in our community to come and enjoy. Right now, we have a lot of George Fox students who come down during like finals week, and they come and sit with the cats, and it really provides relief for a lot of our students, which has been a lot of fun. Some potential concerns that have been brought to our attention is odor and cleanliness. So we are a licensed animal rescue entity, meaning that we are subject to random inspections of cleanliness and the odor is checked. So if there is any complaint submitted to the Department of Ag, they are required to come and investigate. And in that last inspection, we had our ammonia levels monitored and we got a value of 4.5 units. How they do this is they bring in a device that kind of goes and tracks the ammonia. And a concerning level on the ammonia scale is 25 units, with dangerous being 100. And you kind of start to detect at a very low level the smell of ammonia at 5 units, which we were below that threshold. And we'll be committed to having multiple high-tech air purifiers and sterilizers to mask the odors, weekly change of air filters, which we've started doing at our current facility, limiting porous surfaces where odors could accumulate, daily sanitization and emptying of the litter boxes. At our current space, we used to have dogs, which really contributed to the smell that we were facing. And we have moved to like a foster-based system, so all of our dogs and puppies will no longer be staying overnight, pooping, peeing, where that can be in the odor. So it'll just be kitties in a free roaming cat room. And part of our design for the space, we have designed a room away from the public that has a small kitty door where the cats can go in, use their litter boxes, and the smell is contained to one room where it's easy to manage. So anyone going and visiting the free roaming cat room wouldn't be seeing any feces or anything that could be concerning and contribute to an odor. So that's kind of how we're addressing the concern. There was another concern of loudness, which we're not going to have dogs or puppies at the building. So loud yapping and barking and constant noise should be an issue. We will have adoption events where puppies will come in on the weekends, but those will just be during a 12 to 5 kind of business hours. So there shouldn't be any late night dogs barking and keeping anyone up who might have an apartment in the area. But yes, that's kind of our general complaints that we have heard so far. Some potential benefits. We've been reached out to by Second Street Community Church to partner together to bring resources to our friends in the homeless community and their pets. I think they're just a few doors down from us, and so that's a pretty cool partnership that we can bring to the community. We've also chatted with Critter Cabana about a potential partnership to aid our community. We don't really aim to compete with Critter Cabana. We don't have any pet supplies for sale. And we're not going to protest them, but we want to work together as a team to really impact our community. And that's something that we've all been really excited about. And then the reality of our situation, some of you guys might have seen me present a few months back when I was looking for some funding help to potentially purchase a building in Newburgh. But our current building has been unreliable, with a constant threats of eviction and just a really unstable landlord. And so that's kind of forced our move. Right now, our last day allowed in our current building is October 12th, which is Saturday. We understand that we probably should have waited on renovations prior to the CPU being approved, but the renovations we were doing were pretty minor. And since we were kind of on a timeline, we felt like we needed to start them. If this is approved, then we can start the moving in process sooner than having to start the renovations as soon as it's approved, if it is. And so if it's not approved, then that's something that we'll be okay with. And we feel like we've created a really beautiful space that a new business owner can come in and take if that's what happens. So here's some pictures of what we've done so far. We kind of removed some pegboard and some really old carpet and repainted the whole room. That mural you'll see is going to be in our free roaming cat room. We wanted something beautiful and eye-catching for people walking by to promote, to stop and look at the cats through the window and just see a really cool space. And then this is another photo of kind of replacing the floors, repainting everything. This is just kind of hopefully to show you that we don't want to be just another sad, smelly pound where it's not enjoyable or benefiting the community, but really creating a space that people can come and be excited to and draw people to Newburgh. I think one of the concerns we read that we weren't really bringing anything to the Newburgh community and not prompting people to visit Newburgh, but I'd say about 75% of our adopters are people coming from out of Newburgh. and coming to our space, and we do provide things post-adoption, so lots of people will be coming to our store on a weekly basis, which I think would really benefit our neighboring shops. Especially the adoption process can take a while, so going and grabbing a meal or a drink when they're waiting could be really beneficial to New Bergen. And that is it.
Thank you. Just 1 second.
Okay.
So, does any commissioners have any questions for Ms. Veenstra? Thank you very much. That's easy and painless, and we may recall you.
Chair, we do have one public comment we'd like to read in because it came in as one of your supplementary items that came in today. So,
Okay.
Ms. Wagner's
Is
prepared
it
for that.
opponent or proponent?
I believe it's a proponent.
Okay, we'll just do that at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Next we will have Mary. I didn't get a last name. Good one. Okay. Oh, it's in the email. Sorry about that. Please step up to the mic there and say your name into the mic and who you are and and then we can listen to you.
I'm Mary Goodwin. I've lived here since 1998. And I have volunteered at other cat rescues, and they aren't as special as ARC. And they don't just provide nonprofit, no-kill shelter for cats, but they provide a haven for the community. We've had some people bring in mentally ill people and ones with other disabilities, and they love to come and be with the animals, and it seems to be a calming effect. I have been working there as a volunteer every Wednesday for 2 years, and it's my zen time. I really enjoy working with the animals, especially the cats. And it's very good that they help not just cats in the community, but sometimes they help other places that no one else will help. They've gone and rescued cats from hoarding situations in which Child Protection Services asked for help and nobody else would help, but they did help. And they took 55 cats, most of them pregnant, and found them homes. And I think it's a very special place. It does not smell. I have allergies. I'm allergic to cats, believe it or not. I got allergic as an adult, but I go in and brush up to 22 cats on Wednesdays and pet them and play with them. And it's very rewarding. And I think it's an asset for this community.
Thank you. Just a second. Any questions from Ms. Goodwin? Thank you. Next we have Ms. Amber Haven. Just say your name into the mic and there you go.
Okay. My name is Amber Haven. I work at the ARC Pet Rescue. I also volunteer and I also foster. I foster the kittens who struggle. I do the ones who are on hospice. So it's kind of it can be a tough environment for them. But the one thing I've learned about the ARC is these animals do have a place to go. They can go to my house where they live out the best life that they get to have before they pass. We have people call almost every day asking us in the community, what do I do with my pet? I have to rehome them. I found an animal that's injured. What do I do? I found some kittens that are abandoned. I don't know what to do with them. Please help me. We come in and we find a box of kittens sitting at our doorstep. We are so much part of this community. We have people coming in, like Mary just mentioned. Daily, we have our regulars, our families. They bring their children. Their children are growing up in our facility. They feel safe. They feel welcome. I started working at the ARC because I went in there. My mother-in-law went in. She suggested it. I went in and I felt like it was a wonderful place. I felt comfortable there. I started bringing my children there. The next thing you know, I adopted from there. Next thing you know, I'm working there. I'm volunteering there. I'm fostering there. it just has that feel. It has that vibe. It's a wonderful place. We have people come in all the time and say, oh my gosh, I've lived in Newburgh all these years and I didn't even know you were here. And I wish we would have known you were here. We would have come in sooner. We would have adopted from you. With this new location, people will see us. They will be a part of it. We can provide the services that we're providing, but to more people. More people can come in. It's easier, like she was saying, for the George Fox students. They come in all the time. God love them. They get so stressed out with their finals. And just having that safe place for them to come and to decompress. So I'm a huge fan of the ARC, obviously. And I just really hope that this works out and that we are able to have this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Haven? Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Wild, Cassie Wild. And same things, state your name in the mic, and we go.
My name is Cassie Wild, and I am the shelter manager at our pet rescue. I have lived in Newburgh for about since 2016, when I moved here with my family. I wasn't looking for a job when I walked into ARC, but the first thing I felt when I walked in was comfort and happiness, and just a sense of like everyone is taken care of, everyone is loved. Each animal finds a home with us, whether it is a temporary home or it is a long-term home for some of the other kitties that just struggle to find the right person. As Mary said, she comes in weekly. She's not the only one that comes in to spend time with us. I enjoy connecting with each and every person that comes in. I'm the face that they see when they walk in, and I like to put that front forward that to make them feel included like I did when I first walked in. Each and every one of us at ARC loves deeply animals, people, and we all give our part in our lives and our time and efforts to make sure that everybody feels that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Wild? Okay. Thank you very much. And Helen Kruckenberg, I hope I'm not butchering that because I'm struggling with your writing.
Hi, I am Helen Krickenberg, and I am a volunteer with ARC. I am not a member of the Newburgh community, but I am part of the ARC Rescue community. I come all the way from Milwaukee to be part of this community. I will get to how this community has affected me personally, but I want to take a minute to just share what I have seen when I have been at ARC Rescue. I have to frequently go there to get our fosters that we have vaccines, or to have meet and greets with potential adopters. And during that time, on multiple occasions, I have seen a teen girl come in with a book in hand, walk to the cat room, sit on the couch and with the cats and read a book. I have also seen people come in. They are on a first name basis with the employees and volunteers of ARC. And they just come in to see the animals and spend time with them. This is not only so beneficial to the rescued animals to get that social interaction, but it is great for the community as well. Maybe it's the only way someone gets interaction with an animal. I have personally fostered 39 dogs and puppies from ARC. 39 dogs whose fates were once unknown had a chance to flourish first in my home and now with their amazing families in their forever home. This is Ronnie. He was one of the 39 pups that we fostered. He has now become a permanent part of our family. He has been an amazing addition, and now he helps raise the foster puppies that we bring in to foster. He is so gentle and very good with them. The work ARC and us volunteers do is physically and emotionally exhausting, but it brings me so much joy. I think ARC also brings the community joy. I believe in the mission of ARC and what they have done to save so many animals. This new space would open new doors to continue their mission in a much more meaningful manner to the community and to all the animals who are in desperate need of rescue.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Ruckenberg? All right, thank you. And that's all the blue sheets I have. Is there anybody here that else would want to testify for either proponent or opponent for this application? Okay, go ahead and read the missive we've got.
Okay, this is from Rosie Nyberg. To whom it may concern, I have a choice where my donation money goes. Without a doubt, my choice is ARC Pet Rescue in Newburgh. Cats are my choice for a companion. They are doing great things for cats, dogs, cavies, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, and tortoises. As always, you will be greeted by the resident cat, Black Cat, and he is always there to offer a hug and snuggle. I go to ARC regularly to visit and get my cat snuggles. My cat currently passed away, so I get to have as much snuggle time as needed. ARC is always ready to help with homeless stray animals. I have trapped 4 feral cats on our property, taken them to ARC to be adopted out. All have found their forever homes. I am currently fostering a mama and her 3 kids. My first fosters were 3 kittens that have since found their forever homes. I am particularly fond of their intake process. This is always a quarantine of time frames. This allows the animal time to be comfortable and relaxed to begin with their socializing. The crew is always friendly and knowledgeable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Okay, and I do not have any opponents for this application, so I'd say your odds are relatively good. At this point, I'd like to close the public testimony portion of the hearing and get final comments from staff and a recommendation.
Yes, staff is recommending that the commission move to adopt Planning Commission Order 2024-08 with conditions approving conditional use permit CUP 24-0003 for a small animal pet rescue located at 514 East First Street, Yamhill County Tax Lot R3219 AA 10500.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. So moving on to deliberation. What do we think about this application? Go ahead.
I think it's a great idea for the community and bringing together more people, and it's good for businesses, so.
All right. Anyone else have any comments or
Commissioner Quinn,
go ahead?
I've seen this spot vacant for a while, and it's exciting to see that something like this is coming in. The ARC currently is on an offshoot of a street, so they don't get quite as much foot traffic. So this seems like a win-win for the downtown, and it will be higher visibility on the pets that are available for adoption, which seems that it would help the adoption rate as well. So that seems like a great location. While there are valid concerns, it seems like they've taken good strides to make good with the neighbors and mitigate any potential issues. So it sounds like a great idea.
Okay, thank you. All right. Then how about a motion today?
Commissioner Quinn, I move that we approve the adoption of the Planning Commission Order 2024-08 with conditions approving the conditional use permit CUP 24-0003 for the small animal rescue on 514 East First Street, Yamhill County Tax Lot R3219 AA 10500.
Very well, have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I second.
Very well, I'll have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Dale,
Yes.
Lainey Quinn,
Yes.
Abby Sights,
There.
Yes.
Randy Rickard.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion passes. Turns out fluffy kittens in the rescue is a popular idea. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance, and I apologize again for my initial tardiness. Moving on, we have ANX 24-0001, CPMA 19-002. An annexation comprehensive plan map amendment and zoning map amendment for 38019 Northeast Springbrook Road. At this point, I'd like to call for abstentions, bias, ex parte contact, and objections to jurisdiction. Hearing none, we'll move on to the announcement.
ORS 197.763 requires certain statements to be made at the commencement of a public hearing. The applicable city and state zoning criteria must be listed. This means that we must advise you of the standards that must be satisfied by the applicant prior to our approval of an application. The planning staff will list the applicable criteria during his or her presentation of the staff report. Persons wishing to participate in this hearing must direct their testimony or evidence towards the criteria stated by the planner or other specific city or state criteria which you believe apply. You must tell us why the testimony or evidence relates to the criteria. Any issue which might be raised in appeal of this case to the Land Use Board of Appeals must be raised in person or by letter at the local level prior to the city approving or denying the application. The law states that the issue must be raised in enough detail to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond. This part of law is also known as the raise it or waive it requirement. If you do not bring it up now, you cannot bring it up at the Land Use Board of Appeals. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in enough detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing on an application, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission will grant such a request through the continuance or extension of the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Sights. Moving on to the staff report. Mr.
All right.
Dingwall, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So good evening, Commissioners. My name is James Dingwall, one of the Assistant Planners, and we're going to go over the annexation comprehensive plan map amendment and zoning map amendment at 3809 Northeast Springbrook Road. Insert the staff report and supplemental memos into the record. You received one supplemental memo via email with some materials from the applicant yesterday, I believe, and one distributed today containing a public comment that we will read at the appropriate time, and an updated condition of approval in coordination with the applicant and engineering. So to get started, the subject property is 3809 Northeast Springbrook Road. The applicant is Ichijo USA Company Limited. And the owners are Ross D. Kerr and Roland G. Kerr Jr. And the request is to annex 19.16 acres into the Newburgh city limits and a comprehensive plan map and zoning map amendment of 3.202 gross acres to high density residential and R3 zoning. So the current comprehensive plan designation is LDR, low density residential. And the proposed zoning is 16.14 gross acres as low density residential R1 and 3.02 gross acres as high density residential R3. And the subject property is also within the airport overlay and the stream corridor overlay subdistricts. And you can see here the proposed zoning distribution of the high density throughout the site. And I believe that the applicant will speak to that distribution when they have a chance to present. The utilities on the site, water, wastewater, and stormwater currently exists in North Springbrook Road up to the city limits, just to the south. And they can be extended to serve the site if annexed and developed. And the site is also served by overhead lines. The application was deemed complete on August 28th, and a post acknowledgement plan amendment was submitted to DLCD on November 5th. The application was routed to other agencies for referral review on the 17th, and the applicant posted and mailed notice on the 17th and 18th of September. Notice was posted in the paper and in 4 public places on the 26th. And tonight is the Planning Commission hearing to make a recommendation to City Council, who is scheduled to hold a public hearing on November 4th. So we'll start off going through the conditions and criteria for annexation. So the subject site must be located within the urban growth boundary, which this property is, and it must be contiguous to the existing city limits. The criterion is met as the property is contiguous to the south, which is an update and amendment to the staff report, which indicated the north and northeast, but it's contiguous on the southern boundary of the subject property. The criteria for quasi-judicial annexation also include that the proposed use for the site complies with the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan and with the designations on the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan map. If a redesignation of the plan map is requested concurrent with annexation, the uses allowed under the proposed designation must comply with the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan. The current comprehensive plan designation is LDR, low density residential, which corresponds with the requested zoning of R1. And the redesignation of the plan map and zoning map to R3 is being requested per the development code 15-250-30A, which we'll touch on next. So the city requires that where large parcels are to be annexed, large low density residential parcels, the applicants shall concurrently apply for a comprehensive plan map amendment to include some high density residential designated R3 zoned lands, consistent with the city's comprehensive plan policy of distributing that high density housing throughout the community. And such zoning as R3 shall be applied to the portions of the property that are most suitable for high density development. And in this case, large parcels are defined as 15 acres or greater, and that sum is defined as 10% of the net size of the annexation. So the proposed, the subject property is 19.16 gross acres in size. So after subtracting land in the stream corridor overlays, the subject property is 18.82 net acres. The applicant is proposing 3.01 net acres of high-density residential R3 zoned land, approximately 16% of the net size of the subject property. The development code requirement that we just talked about, that 10% of the net size shall be designated high density, is a minimum requirement, and the applicant has proposed 16. Staff finds that the additional 1.13 or 6% of the net size above that 10% standard meets a need for high density residential uses in the comprehensive plan and may be approved based on the following facts. The comprehensive plan includes a buildable land inventory and discussion of housing needs. And section 5, land need and supply, indicates that 83 acres of high density residential land are needed to accommodate 1,467 housing units between 2026 and 2040. So the proposed comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments provision of additional 6% high density land serves to meet this identified need. The applicant also provided findings that the proposed location of the high density residential and zoning districts are most suitable on the site, consistent with additional comprehensive plan policies. The plan indicates that medium and high density areas should be located for immediate access to collector streets and easily accessible to arterial streets, and be located near commercial services and public open spaces. So the applicant has indicated that the location of the proposed R3 land on the site is proximate to Springbrook Road, a major collector, and the highest road classification that serves the site, supporting that location policy. The second criteria is that an adequate level of urban services must be available or made available within 3 years' time of annexation, except as noted in the subsection. An adequate level of urban services is defined as first, municipal wastewater and water service meeting the requirements and enumerated in the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan for the provision of those services. And the staff report indicates that these utilities are available and met with conditions of approval. The first condition of approval is that with future development of the site, the development will be required to provide a downstream wastewater analysis to determine if downstream deficiencies exist that need to be addressed by the development. Second, with future development of the site, the development will be required to provide a scoping memo for the water booster pump station design. The city of Newburgh is to be provided with a water pump booster station design scoping memo for coordination prior to the development beginning design. And then finally, with future development of the site, the development will also be required to extend public water and wastewater lines to and through the development site. Second, that roads with an adequate design capacity for the proposed use and for projected future uses. Where construction is not deemed necessary, the city shall note and require some dedication, non-remonstrance, or other mechanisms. And so this criteria is also met with conditions of approval. The subject property has frontage on Northeast Springbrook Road. And so the conditions imposed are that with future development of the site, the development will be required to locate the center line of the street based on the dimensions of a full major collector and dedicate the amount of additional right-of-way necessary to provide for the full cross-section. Second, that with development of the site, since the existing railroad right-of-way is adjacent to the public road right-of-way, the developer will be required to build full street improvements for Northeast Springbrook Road. This would include street lighting and is to be consistent with existing street improvements on both sides of Northeast Springbrook Road southwest of the site. And finally, with future development of the site, the development will be required to complete transportation system mitigations recommended in the traffic impact analysis for the future development. Staff went through some modifications that will be proposed to the second condition in discussion with the applicant and with the engineering division. The applicant proposed revising the condition to specify that it will occur at future development of the site and to remove the language matching the standards for major collectors, speaking to the specificity conditioned at this annexation process as opposed to the development review. And I believe they will be able to speak to that modification as well in their presentation. And then staff engineering requested that the condition also specify that the developer will be required to build the full street improvements as opposed to the applicant, and that these improvements will occur on both sides of the street. So the proposed amended condition is that with future development of the site, since the existing railroad right-of-way is adjacent to the public road right-of-way, the developer will be required to build full street improvements for Northeast Springbrook Road. This would include street lighting and is to be consistent with existing street improvements on both sides of Northeast Springbrook Road, southwest of the site. The third criteria for the annexation is findings that document the availability of police, fire, parks, and school facilities and services shall be made for conclusionary findings, whether for or against the proposed annexation. The adequacy of these services shall be considered in relation to the annexation proposals. So the subject property is within the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, Chehalem Park and Recreation, Newburgh Dundee Police Department, and Newburgh School District service districts. These districts were provided a referral review opportunity, and no comments were received that adequate services could not be provided to the subject property. Fourth is that the burden for providing the previous findings is to be provided by the applicant, and the applicant did submit adequate information for the city to make these findings that demonstrate compliance with the applicable criteria. And fifth, the city council may annex properties where urban services are not and cannot be made available within 3 years. However, the previous finding indicated that services are available, and so this criterion is not applicable. The quasi-judicial annexation procedures references annexations going to a referral to the voters. This criteria is not applicable since this code language was added. The passage and adoption of Senate Bill 1573 in 2016 added language to the Oregon Revised Statute 222-111 that preempts Newburgh's requirement that annexations go to a public vote when the property meets certain requirements, including being within the EGB, subject to the comprehensive plan, contiguous to the city limits, and meeting the development code criteria for annexation, which this property does. The code requires that the applicant submit all the necessary application materials, which this applicant did. And now we'll move on to the comprehensive plan and zoning designation amendments. So the comprehensive plan designation of the property at the time of annexation shall be used as a criterion to determine whether or not the proposed request complies with the Newburgh comprehensive plan, and a redesignation of the comprehensive plan may be requested concurrently. That proposed designation shall be then used to determine compliance. So the comprehensive plan designation of the site is currently LDR, low density residential, which corresponds with the requested zoning of R1, and the redesignation of approximately 3.01 net acres of the plan to that high density residential and R3 zoning is being requested per the code's requirement in 15-250-30A. Upon annexation, the area shall be automatically zoned to that corresponding land use. And so you can see here that the corresponding land use is the low density and R1, and that redesignation is being proposed as required elsewhere in the code. If a zoning classification is requested by the applicant other than described, the criteria of the zone change will apply in 15-02-30, and it shall be submitted concurrently. The concurrent zone map and comprehensive plan map change was submitted concurrently, and we will be going through those criteria. And in the event that the annexation request is denied, the zone change request shall also be denied, and the applicant has indicated they understand this requirement. Coordination, annexation requests are being coordinated with affected public and private agencies, including Yamhill County, the Chehalem Park and Recreation District, Newburgh School District, Northwest National Gas, Portland General Electric, and where appropriate, various state agencies. Coordination shall be made by referral of annexation requests to these bodies sufficiently in advance of the final city action for reviews and recommendations to be incorporated into the city records. So the referral was sent to these agencies on September 17th, and any responses have been incorporated into the staff report and conditions. Moving on to the zoning map and comprehensive plan map amendment. Property owners may initiate a map amendment for one parcel or a small group of parcels under a type 3 procedure, and it may be initiated also by the planning commission. Unlike other type 3 procedures, like the previous conditional use permit, the decision of the planning commission shall be in the form of a recommendation to city council, who will then hold another hearing and make a final decision. This map amendment is initiated by the property owners per the code requirement, and city council is scheduled to hold a hearing on November 4th. Where an application has been denied, no new application for the same purpose shall be filed within 1 year, unless city council grants permission, and no application for zone change has been denied on this property within the last year. And the applicant acknowledges this restriction if this request is denied. The owner must demonstrate compliance with the following criteria for a zoning and comprehensive plan map amendment: that the proposed change is consistent with and promotes the goals, policies of the Newburgh Comprehensive Plan and the Development Code, that public facilities and services are or can be reasonably made available to support the uses allowed by the proposed change, and compliance with the state transportation planning rule for proposals that significantly affect transportation facilities. The proposed change from low density residential R1 to high density residential R3 are requested to comply with the comprehensive plan policy and Newburgh Municipal Code 15-250-30A1. Findings have been provided previously that public facilities can be made available to support the proposed uses, and the applicant submitted a traffic impact analysis demonstrating compliance with the state transportation planning rule in their application materials. Fourth, the property owner who desires to have the property reclassified has the burden of establishing that it meets the requirements of the section and shall submit a waiver stating that the owner will not file any Measure 49 demands, which was approved on November 6, 2007, amending ORS 195 and 197. The applicant provided materials to support the criteria and submitted a Measure 49 waiver in their application materials. And finally, a traffic study shall be submitted for any proposed change that would significantly affect a transportation facility or that would allow uses that would increase trip generation in excess of 40 trips per PM peak hour. And a traffic impact analysis was submitted by the applicant in the application materials demonstrating impacts on nearby intersections upon completion of a residential subdivision on the subject property. And a development proposal has not been submitted concurrent with this annexation, but may follow. Finally, the subject property is within the airport conical overlay surface for Sportsman Air Park, and it's also within the stream corridor overlay on its eastern portion, just over 0.3 acres. And the approval is conditioned that any future development will be subject to the stream corridor limitations in that area. And just so you can get a sense, the corridor overlay is just to the east there, in that thin strip along the property line. Final development standard is that utility underground installation. So the site is currently served by overhead lines, and all new utility lines, including but not limited to electric, communication, utility, shall be placed underground. This criteria is not applicable with this proposal, as no development is currently proposed concurrent to the annexation application. Any existing utility lines shall be placed underground, and this criteria is being met as conditioned that the existing utilities will be placed underground. And finally, the developer may make exceptions to that undergrounding requirement if the cost is extraordinarily expensive, if there are physical factors that make undergrounding extraordinarily difficult, or if existing utilities in the area are overhead and unlikely to be changed, and no request has been made at this time to exempt from the undergrounding requirement. So staff's recommendation is that Planning Commission moves to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2024-396, which recommends the Newburgh City Council annex property at 3809 Northeast Springbrook Road into the city of Newburgh as shown in Exhibit A, based on findings in Exhibit B as amended, and subject to conditions of approval in Exhibit C as amended. And one last note, Exhibit A contains a legal description and survey map of the property. We have submitted for preliminary approval from the state as part of the annexation process, who has requested some modifications to that survey and legal description. And the applicant has indicated that they are making those ahead of the city council. So there will be slight changes in that Exhibit A that goes to city council to reflect requests made by the State Department of Revenue.
Okay,
And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
thank you. Do we have any questions for staff?
I had a clarification question.
Good.
There, you cited, Mr. Dingwall, earlier in your presentation that the current full low density plan was no longer viable. What were you saying? You're saying that
Yep. So
based on a study. Can you elaborate on why
yep,
the low
so-
density is no longer viable?
Yeah, so it's not that the low density is no longer viable. The code and comprehensive plan requires that. Requires that when the city annexes large parcels, so larger than 15 acres, that high density residential land is distributed throughout the city. That's kind of a general housing policy that the city has enacted. And so the method of implementing this policy is that when these large parcels are annexed, the city requires a redesignation of the plan designation. So the subject property is currently all zoned LDR, but to meet this requirement of at least 10% high density land, the applicant is required to submit the concurrence comprehensive plan map and zoning map amendment. So the code requires 10%. The applicant has proposed 16%. And the comprehensive plan has a section that is adopted to project housing need. And that adopted analysis indicates that between 2026 and 2040, the city will need 83 acres of high density land to support 1,467 high density units. So staff finds that the additional 6% being proposed by the applicant supports this need. And so are recommending that it be approved at 16, but the redesignation is required by this code policy itself.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And is that why this one vote approves all three? Because it's all a part of the same updating.
Yeah, so
Okay,
submitted as a concurrent package.
got it. Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you, Commissioner Quinn. Any further questions for staff? Okay, thank you. At this point, I'd like to open the public testimony. We'll have a 5-minute time limit per speaker, 15 minutes for the applicant and the principal opponent. And also be time for rebuttal if necessary. And do we have the applicant here? And we'll have the applicant step up to the mic and away you go. And please just hit the button and say your name.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Planning Commission, for your time tonight, and thank you, city staff. That was a very nice, comprehensive presentation. Thank you, James, for the staff report. And my name is Sam Huck. I am a planner at 3J Consulting, representing the applicant Ichijo USA. For the record, my address is 9600 Southwest Nimbus Avenue, Suite 100 in Beaverton, Oregon, 97008. I have a couple members of my team with me today. If we have any questions that you guys have that we can answer. And I have a brief presentation today that'll give an overview of the site, the proposal in this application, and then how this application briefly meets the review criteria. Try not to double up on everything that James said. So, thank you. So you can see the site is located here. It's 19.16 acres in total. It's located at 3809 Northeast Springbrook Road. The site is located right there at the edge of the city limits, which is shown in this map with the red dotted line. The entire property is already in the urban growth boundary, commonly referred to as the UGB though. Here's a little bit more zoomed in. I've highlighted the property with this black line here. As you can see, it's fully within the UGB, shown with the yellow line in this map. Contiguous or touching the city limits, which is that red dashed line. The site is surrounded by other lower density residential lands and located next to the Allison Hotel, which is indicated on the property with that sort of orange and coming through a little red on this screen with the SD/H designations. The current comprehensive plan map designation for the entire site is that low density residential right now. And as James just mentioned, for any application that's over 15 acres in size, the city's development code requires that the applicant also apply for the comprehensive plan map amendment to include some of the land that's brought in as the high density residential or HDR designation. That's the comprehensive plan designation that corresponds to the zoning designation of R3. Development code defines some of the land to mean 10% or at least 10% of the net size of the annexation area. And here you can see our proposed map designations and zoning designations. The yellow is proposed at that same low density residential corresponding with the R1 zoning. And the red is proposed at the high density residential with the R3 zoning. Proposing 16% of that land to be brought in with the HDR/R3 zoning, which, as James mentioned, exceeds the requirement by about 6%. If this annexation is approved tonight, or recommended to City Council for approval, the future development of the site will be possible and allows for those key infrastructure connections to the other LDR properties, mostly to the west of this site, that are also located within the city's UGB. And here's an aerial with the existing utilities shown. It's similar to the one James had in his staff report and presentation, with the conditions of approval that staff and the applicant have agreed upon. the applicant will be able to bring the necessary utilities to the site, which are shown in the colors. They're right there in Northeast Springbrook. Prior to any development of the site or prior to any building permits that get pulled. As you can see, the water main and wastewater main, stormwater connections all currently terminate right there at that south corner of the site, so definitely available. And then this is the condition of approval modification. This version is a little outdated. James' version was the most recent one, and the applicant agrees to that language modification. And we would be good with that being forwarded to the city council. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you again for all your time this evening, and if you have any questions.
Thank you.
happy to take 'em.
Any questions for, sorry, I'm forgetting. Sam, yeah, thank you. Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, I don't have any blue sheets for this application. So do we have any other proponents or opponents?
So we do have one public comment that was submitted in writing in one of the supplemental packets that you received tonight.
Okay.
I will read that for the record. We are Scott Huffman and Tracy Wagner, residents of 29505 Northeast Benjamin Road in Newburgh, Oregon. We are writing to express our concerns regarding the proposed annexation of property designated ANX 240001. Newburgh is cherished for its small town atmosphere, renowned wineries, and stunning natural surroundings, which contribute to its appeal as a desirable place to live. However, we have specific concerns regarding the proposed annexation. One, compatibility with surrounding areas. According to page 8 of the 3809 Northeast Springbrook Road annexation document, the development is stated to be compatible with the surrounding area. However, the property is currently designated as low-density residential and is proposed to change to R1 and R3. The addition of a 105-home subdivision could significantly alter the look and feel of the neighborhood. We believe the development would be more compatible if it were modeled after Ellis Estates on Bell Road and the Vista Glen subdivision on Ellery Drive, offering larger lot sizes and fewer homes to reduce the environmental impact. 2, water supply concerns. The proposed density raises critical questions about the water supply available to Newburgh. This annexation would place an additional burden on the city's water supply and on homes near the annexation that depend on wells. It is imperative to clarify how the project plans to secure water resources and what measures will be implemented to ensure that existing residents relying on wells are not negatively impacted. 3, traffic safety issues. The traffic report did not adequately address concerns about traffic flow on Springbrook Road. The current access point at Springbrook and Benjamin Road presents visibility issues in both directions. Limited sightlines could lead to accidents, especially as drivers often fail to stop at the stop sign, creating dangerous situations for those who do obey. The increased traffic raises serious safety concerns for accessing Springbrook from Benjamin Road. The speed limit on Benjamin Road is 40 miles an hour, with cars traveling at higher speeds and passing, although the road is designated as no passing. Benjamin Road is a country road. Does the county have additional funds to maintain the road with increased traffic? Is there a consideration to lower the speed limit to at least match Springbrook Road at 35 miles per hour? 4, access and traffic flow. The proposed development has identified a single entry and exit point onto Springbrook Road. Has there been consideration for traffic entering Springbrook Road at Benjamin? Additionally, Benjamin Road is posted as no through truck traffic, yet the signs are difficult to see. GPS systems sometimes route drivers through the area, exacerbating traffic issues. If and when construction begins, how will trucks traveling through be addressed? The traffic report for Benjamin Road presents numbers that seem low and may not accurately reflect actual traffic flow. Does the study account for projected increased traffic from the completion of the Crestview Crossing development and the homes being built in the Kalina subdivision in Mountain View? A thorough review and clarification of these numbers are essential before proceeding with such a significant development. In conclusion, the safety of our community must be a top priority when considering this annexation. We urge the Newburgh Planning Commission to reconsider this proposal, taking into account the pressing traffic concerns, implications for water supply, and overall impact on our community. Thank you for considering our concerns as you deliberate on this matter. Sincerely, Scott Huffman and Tracy Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Dingwall. Okay, if there's nobody up for proponents or opponents, and I believe we'll close the public testimony portion of the hearing and move on to final comments from staff and recommendation.
The staff's recommendation is to move to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2024-396, which recommends the Newburgh City Council annex property at 3809 Northeast Springbrook Road into the city of Newburgh, as shown in Exhibit A, based on findings in Exhibit B as amended and subject to conditions of approval in Exhibit C as amended.
Very well, thank you. Any final questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to deliberation. What do we think about this application? Commissioner Rickard.
I would, the concerns that were written in, I think are very valid concerns. Especially the traffic safety issues and the access and traffic flow from Benjamin Road. With the increase of, up to 105 homes, I could see Benjamin Road being a shortcut, so to speak, for traffic coming to and from the Sherwood area, and wanted to know how that would be addressed. I think that's a very valid concern there.
Okay. So as a reminder for commissioners, and since I don't think we've done this, annexations. So when considering an annexation, you have to consider that the plans for the property may change. And so what they have right now is subject to change due to concerns of get the name right, Ms. Wagner and Mr. Huffman, because I think you're correct that it's definitely a valid concern. But so at the same time, you have to take into account that, okay, we can approve this annexation and say your concern is going to be addressed at the project level when the project gets approved, or have that as a addendum. And there's various ways, but you just have to keep that in mind. I agree with you when it comes to the concern there, specifically about the density that people always seem to raise. And I find it very disappointing that the majority of the concerns we have regarding density complaints from the community is that they're objecting to high density. And the problem with that is that we're directed from on high at the state level that we have to have high density, because it passed state law, I believe, in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, with the density changes. So, yeah, sorry to tack onto you there. I didn't mean to. Commissioner Seitz, did you have anything? Did I see? Okay.
I did one
Go ahead.
more thing. I think, I understand, that we do, but it is hard to have deliberations for us, right? And a project of this magnitude, while all projects that come to us or resolutions that come to us are important, this one is very impactful to the community. And I just feel like deliberating between only four of us is hard to do. It would be nice to get perspectives from the other commissioners. Yes.
So I just wanted to mention too, that with respect to some of the items that are brought up in this public comment, we do have staff from the engineering division here. We also have the applicant team here. You'd have to open the public comment or the public hearing portion of the hearing if you wanted to ask questions of the applicant, but they are here. They do so. Our engineering staff can answer some of those questions related to this and the extent to which it would be addressed in that project level item. Because what is in front of you tonight is related to annexation, the action of bringing property into the city, as well as the designations associated with our comprehensive plan map and our zoning map. So the developments themselves are not, that's not what we're looking at today. And so some of those nuts and bolts, those things that are very specific on, do they meet it? How do they meet it? Those will be addressed to a greater extent in a future setting. So if the applicant chooses to take pathways where it's something like a type 2 process, it would be administrative rather than coming to a public hearing. But those type 2 procedures still have a public comment window, and staff have to take those things into consideration, including if someone requested it go to a public hearing, what have you. So So the procedures still exist at the project level, and they still have to follow some of the criteria that are set for meeting the requirements associated with safety, traffic, and those sorts of things, and demonstrating those. But I think to the extent that we can today, engineering's happy to answer some questions, or we could ask the applicant if we really feel we need to. So I just wanted to put that out there.
So do you feel you want to ask engineering staff some questions? We can still do that without reopening the public record, if you would like.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Commissioner Quinn, would you like to add anything?
I would, yeah. Thank you, Clay, for always adding such beautiful clarification there. Really appreciate that. And to my fellow commissioners' point, that it does seem like one of those things that needs to be not taken very lightly. I do think that this is a larger component than we might typically see on any given particular meeting. Having been with the commission about over a year now, I remember reading it's been a second, but I read the comprehensive plan as best I could and looked at a lot of the Springbrook Crossing components. And I remember at the time being very impressed. Seeing the lighting that was on the streets and how it would be like low light pollution. I thought that there were very impressive considerations that were taken while planning out this space. And if I'm not mistaken, part of what I heard here tonight was that this would fall under the continuation of the guidelines within the Springbrook Crossing, which I recall being very fond of, having looked through those papers, albeit quite a minute ago. And to what Clay was saying too, it's like, yes, there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration, and it seems that it could be viewed as taking it too lightly to just pass this. But to Clay's point, there are so very many things that will happen after this that will require different approvals and to go through city council and not just us. So this is just to kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, Clay or Jason, this is to start the conversation. There will be requirements that need to be met outside of us just saying, yes, this could be taken into consideration and require further approving.
Well, just to maybe add on to the other side of the coin of what you're bringing up there, by us approving this property to be brought into the city, we're also not necessarily approving all of their projected plans for the property. So make sure that that's a separate thing. Go ahead.
And one clarification that the project is not in the Springbrook Crossings approval or the Springbrook sub-district master plan. So while the applicant may be required to kind of meet the standards of the city's design guidelines, they may not match exactly what you've seen elsewhere in the city, but would still be required to meet the construction and design guidelines. And then also just to clarify that the applicant has a option to go through a type 2 subdivision or a type 3 planned unit development. So in that type 3 process, it would mirror this coming back to the planning commission for a decision. So.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Quinn, does that help you?
I mean, no, but I get what he's saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion about this application, or do we want to talk more about it?
Jason, what do you got? What are you thinking?
I don't see any problems with it, and I think the issues that have been raised will be taken care of at the project level.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I guess one thing I might want to throw out is in recent meetings, I want to say in the last quarter, there was a lot of topic of discussion of another development across from the hospital, and that they moved the residential densities around quite a bit, and it was met with a lot of consternation from the community. It wasn't very much approved by the planning commission, given the amount of times the request had been altered over a period of time during the building and planning process. So I would just like to point out that hasn't gone well a lot in the past. It has been met with a lot of resistance. So if this is being moved from a low density to a high density for valid reasons based on people who are paid to do these studies that know a lot more about how people are going to move around in the future than myself, that all makes sense to me. I would just like to make sure that that is the reason why these things are happening and that the builders take that into consideration and not continually move the goalposts, as it were, as we may have witnessed and to our dismay with recent other developments. I would just like to point that out.
Well, my answer to that would be that's on us to make sure we're on top of that as commission and as city staff. So do you
So that would
think-
be if it's at like a level 3 thing, I suppose then.
Well, if it goes to that, but if it goes before us, then that's on us to take care of it. And there's legal challenges available to any parties of it at every point of the process. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
and I would note that, kind of while in a PUD process, there may be kind of density, moving happen. So the comprehensive plan map and zoning map amendment are legislative changes to adopted maps in the comprehensive plan. And so if the applicant or a future, developer came back to change that, that would go through the full legislative planning commission process again, as opposed to a unit development modification that we may have seen in other cases. So kind of where the applicant is proposing that distribution of high density, if they don't end up developing the site, that designation stays with this parcel until something else happens, and people would have to adhere to those development standards in R3 in a development of a subdivision or just a standalone development. So I think there's a slight distinction between the amendment requested here and possibly some changes that we've seen in other developments.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we have a, do we think we're ready for that?
And think so, as it pointed out with the 4 of us here. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add?
No.
Okay. I move that we move to adopt the planning commission resolution 2024-396 with recommendations that the city council approve or consider the request for annexation zoning designations for the respective properties.
Or I'll have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Dale,
Yes.
Lainey Quinn,
Yes.
Abby Sights,
Yes.
Randy Rickert.
Yes.
Our motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you to the applicants and good luck. Moving on, we have a work session. Is that correct, Clay?
Yes, that is correct. So this is coming back. This is going to be the craft industrial new zoning designation. And so tonight is going to be a work session where we present the draft language that's been prepared for this. You before received a brief update because this is actually the reboot of a project that was initiated in 2019 and
The
is related
Mill
to our.
District?
We were previously calling it the Mill District. We're
Yeah.
trying not to do that because it confuses everyone we talk to.
Especially me.
So we're just calling it Craft Industrial District. And so, Planner Cromie here, Jeremiah will be presenting this to everyone and I'll be basically watching and listening for everyone. And we're really happy to receive your input on this. It's something the city's had in the queue for a long time. And so we're excited to get some of this language in front of you and to highlight some of those changes. So take it away.
Okay, thank you.
Before we go, I just wanted to put it out there, Chair, we are at about 8:40 or so. Do any of the commissioners need a break?
Just about to, you're stepping on my toes.
Sorry,
Apologize.
sorry, I
Does
didn't wanna-
anybody need a water break or anything? You good? I was gonna get some water, so go ahead and I'm listening as you go.
All right, thanks, Chair. I think Chair Dale was actually around when this started, so I think he's the only commissioner around when this started. So what we have tonight, a work session on the craft industrial. So this area, I gave an update on it in, I believe it was April of this year. So this project originally started back in 2019 as part of the downtown improvement plan that was actually adopted in 2017. Prior work to that was one of the recommendations. So there was a bunch of work done in 2019 through 2021. They're including planning commission workshops, business owner workshops. And they just kind of basically sat on the shelf until we had the staff to keep working on it, and it was approved in the 2024 planning diversion work plan. So this is a quote from the downtown improvement plan. And for this craft industrial, a place where goods can be made, sampled or touched, within easy walking distance of the civic cultural corridor, which is roughly the north-south corridor from City Hall down where we are, and then up north to the cultural center. And then focus on jobs and adding tourism value. So the current zoning is a mix of our M2 light industrial and our C3 central business district. So this area in the yellow here is what is proposed to be changed to the M5 zoning district. And since the last time I gave an update on this, we did add the Papa Murphy site in on that corner. So it was not previously included. Staff was not really sure why. Maybe Chair Dale can tell me why. But to make it cleaner, we added the Papa Murphy site in on that.
Where's that?
So it might help. So right below that corner on Main and Hancock, up right there. Yep, there. So for some reason it was not included. I'm happy to know why if anybody knows, but I don't know. So it includes areas like the Shalem Valley Mill, Gym 100, Raised Produce, Crushed Cellar, and the Burrito Loco. The existing comp plan is a mix of industrial and commercial, and this would get changed to a mixed use comp plan designation under the proposal. So then I wanted to get into some of the kind of chapter by chapter of the current proposed language. So the full proposed code amendments are in your packet. So I was gonna go through, so there's new definitions created, saying craft industrial, manufacturing, packaging, similar to goods. It's somewhat similar to light manufacturing, but it has that retail component to it. And then live work units, building space jointly used for commercial manufacturing with the residential unit. And that can be on the ground floor unit. There's some standards for live work. We'll get into it a little bit later. So right now, in most cases, your mixed use, at least in the C3, you have to be on the second floor. So it would add a new craft industrial district, which we don't have, and it's preserve.
And that's under the M5 designation.
So yes, so this would be a new M5 designation. The craft industrial would be part of. It's a mix of commercial and light industrial uses, that small scale craft uses. So think what I tell people, think of like a woodworking shop or a glass blowing shop with a retail component. It's kind of the.
And the owner lives upstairs?
Loaner could potentially live upstairs, so we have that mixed use dwelling unit, and then we have a live work dwelling unit, so either one theoretically could work. So.
I think the reason there was confusion with me in the past is because we were proposing the same sort of a thing for the riverfront district area down, when you went east of River Road where the inking plant used to be, which is now a pile of concrete, I guess.
Yeah, and that'd be a mixed employment zone. That I don't know if you want to speak on that one.
Yeah, I would say the way that I've thought about it, and you can correct me, Jeremiah, depending on what you think, but to me, the ME is trying to hybridize industrial and kind of trying to soften an industrial space as it goes directly towards residential. So it's a mixture of different employment types, and that's that ME component. And this is trying to hybridize industrial and commercial spaces, where you can do a lot of those industrial type activities, but have commercial activities like Anvil Academy, for example. They're hosting classes, which is kind of a commercial type application, a lot of visitation and things like that, but they're doing metalworking and those sorts of things.
Okay, I'm probably further confusing the commercial with the commercial residential hybrid, so.
Right, so
Yeah.
it's the idea that you're trying to give that spectrum of uses and soften it as you go between those to make sure they're not incompatible. One of the big, sorry, actually, no, because you're gonna get into development standards. I'm about to get out of line, so I apologize, but I'll let Jeremiah continue. But I would just think of it as when you think of particularly this, because we're talking about the purpose of those, if you looked at that chapter on what their purposes are, we're trying to create a spectrum so that every use has a place. That's what we're trying to do.
I would also say that the craft industrial is more to be tourism related than your mixed employment.
So, since we're just kind of riffing here, if you attach this zoning overlay to these properties, is there anything that precludes them from going, you know, full industrial or full commercial, or, you know, do we, we're not proposing like, okay, this person is 10% this and 90% this or 30%, or, you know, we're not saying that they have to have a, you know, precise mixture or anything.
Yeah, we're not saying that. And just to clarify, it's not would not be an overlay district. It would be a completely new district.
Right. Yeah, but I'm using that as.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
Yeah.
And I think some of your other questions may get answered in a couple
Sorry.
more slides. So there's some other clarifications under the current, there's a food and beverage production category, which would be allowed. It's currently allowed in the M2 district, and it's just updating this to clean up the examples. It would also be allowed in the craft industrial district. And then, so with the, if you don't have the retail or part, it's typically light manufacturing. So there was some changes in the original plan that had this updating for artisan production as well. We took that back out of this. So it was trying to basically combine like the craft with the food and beverage. So we made sure those food and beverage and the craft industrial uses were different. And then if you were to do these sort of the food and beverage production without retail, you're basically classified under a light manufacturing use.
Now, is that due to, or is that distinction due to traffic concerns, or what is the reasoning behind that? Or
So I wouldn't say it's traffic concerns. That's just to differentiate the use category.
Good.
So, and then we added the new craft industrial category to uses. So it has that manufacturing, processing, fabrication, packaging, or assembly of goods with the associated public commercial component on site. So that's your manufacturing goods, leathers, glass, textiles. And then you're making stuff on site, you're selling it on site. Going. So then, so go through their current zoning districts and then what was proposed in M5. So in the current C3 and M2, housing is limited, but it is allowed with conditional use under some criteria. So in the new M5 zone, and M2 is pretty limited outside the mixed use and caretaker dwelling unit. So in M5, we took out all that single family, duplex, triplex, quadplex. I mean, most of it wasn't allowed anyways. But you can still have the multifamily with above the first floor and the mixed use dwelling. And then there's the caretaker dwelling unit, which caretaker dwelling is a person that can live on site that basically is like think of a security officer, like on site 24 hours that lives on there. And then the live work unit, which I talked a little bit about earlier, and there's some special use standards with that. So there are options for residential. We didn't feel like we're taking away residential options. It's not intended to be a residential district, but there are housing options still available, and we don't believe we're hurting the housing stock. So most of the commercial industrial uses that were allowed in the C3 and M2 districts would be allowed in the new M5 districts. So some uses that were previously allowed in M5, or sorry, prohibited use that are previously allowed in M2 that would be prohibited in M5 would be heavy manufacturing, self-storage units, warehousing, and waste-related use, as well as outdoor recreational marijuana producer. Outside of those residential ones I just mentioned, that's kind of the big difference. And then we add that craft industrial use in. And then there's some special standards for that. For a conditional use permit. So current requirements on lot size for C3 is 5,000, that wouldn't change. M2 is 20,000 square feet, so those lots that are zoned to M2 would have a much smaller minimum lot size. I don't probably anticipate a lot of partitions or subdivisions in this area since it's already pretty well chopped up, outside of maybe actually some consolidations maybe. Setbacks, C3, 0, that's not changing. The M2 has a 20-foot front setback. That would be down to 0. And it's more leaning probably, I would say, towards the C3 district than the M2, trying to bring that more commercial tourist, but have that industrial feel on the west end of downtown. And then 0 feet unless it abuts residential. And then it's 10 feet. Nothing directly abuts residential in the district. There is an alley that abuts some of the current M2, and I might go back for a minute. Should be a little better. So on that northeast corner there, that yellow is residential. Separated by an alley. And something I'd love to hear your thoughts on, if there should be a further setback for future buildings over there. Currently it's proposed to be 0. Because of the alley separation, it would not have. And I'll get into off-street parking in a minute. So the other thing that you'll have is the maximum building height. Obviously you have your airport standards, which most cases aren't going to apply over here. And then unless abutting residential, the residential height would be limited to 50 feet from the abutting boundary. This one also wouldn't apply unless the alley, which I want to also get your feedback on if you believe that should be amended to include the alley. And then this one, the no off-street parking is required unless it's abutting or across an alley from a residential district. So those ones that on that northeast corner would be required to provide off-street parking. And I did talk to a few of the neighbors that in that, I think it's off, I won't say it's Garfield Street. Over there, there was at least 1 or 2 that are concerned about off-street parking. And then there wouldn't be any landscaping requirements unless they were installing parking and loading areas. If they did, it'd be 12.5 square feet of landscaping per parking space, and then landscaping strip of 5 feet to a lot line adjacent to a street, not an alley, and 5 feet. So basically 5 feet planter strips around the edge of the properties. Street trees will still be required in planter strips. And then the other ones, just kind of a cleanup, the outdoor cafe style seating with in the right of way landscaping allowed, providing ADA standards are met. So you see a lot of that all downtown. This is clean that up. And then these are the special standards for the live work units. Minimum of 75% of the structure's street front facade, street level should be occupied by non-residential uses. And the way we would interpret that too is both. If it was on a corner lot, it would be both sides. Minimum floor to floor height, the first floor shall be 13 feet. That was a carryover from the recommendation. I don't know exactly on the 13 feet where that came from. And then if they did provide off-street parking, they can't be located between your structure, street, front facade, and the street. So you can't have parking in front of your building. The building would have to be in front. So the building would be the closest to the street. And then the primary entrance for the work use should be oriented towards the street frontage or common courtyard. That can be also be used for residential units. And then sign standards. So currently C3, the downtown district, has its special standards for signs. We would not carry that over to the craft industrial district. So we're basically mostly keeping what the M2 zone has as far as their electronic message signs, and that's what this is here. So we would allow the static, which is just staying on, alternating message, which I believe you can change every 10 seconds, and then animated, and the rest of those extended flashing lights would be prohibited. And then the special use standards for craft industrial. So at least, and this is fairly similar to the retail and food production. 25% of the gross floor area has to be for retail or similar customer use, which could be like classrooms with a minimum of 1,000 square feet. Not next to residential. Site cannot, but site with residential zoning, which none of it technically does unless you were to change it to an alley. Included with that, size limitation on the production area is limited to 10,000 square feet. Outdoor storage can't be more than 10% of the site, has to be screened. Then if they can't meet those standards, there is an option. Excuse me. It would go through a conditional use process, so it would come to you here at the planning commission to make a decision on it. And that same thing happens with the food and beverage production, if they were to do that. So just a tentative timeline. You have your planning commission workshop tonight. Meeting with owners is currently ongoing, and lessees. I've talked to a couple of them, and I've went down, handed out flyers and talked to a few more people down there. We have other department agency review going on now. We have the Measure 56 notice going out, notifying people that their zoning may be changing for their allowed uses requirement by the state. Planning commission, this would come back to you next month for a hearing. And then council workshop on the 18th for any other additional items. Hearing December 2nd, and then assuming this all stays up to date, the new district would be in effect in January of next year. So there's kind of two items that I touched on is the height and the any other setbacks that I did want feedback on, as far as if there need to be clarification across an alley, and any other thoughts you have, I'd love to hear them. Back to that one.
Can you remind me what the height? Oh, I was so focused on the alleys, I missed the height concern you wanted to address, Jeremiah.
The height, there's no maximum building height currently proposed unless it's abutting residential, which none of the district currently abuts residential. There is residential across an alley. So the way
Okay.
but it has to touch it. So the alley separates it currently.
Okay, so there's no maximum building height. Are there not air rights that would be inherent to the region that would need to be abided by?
So the airport overlay, yes, and where that is, you're talking probably 380 feet, which I
Okay.
doubt, unless there was some massive skyscraper proposed for Newburgh, I highly doubt.
I mean, I'd be open to trying to cap it at, I mean, what's the rest of the city at? It's effectively two-story. Is there a three-story building?
So I can answer it. So C3, our downtown currently does not have a maximum building height, unless it abuts residential. So it's the same thing.
Sure, but just aesthetically speaking,
In general, in our residential
I think it's
district,
like two.
so in most cases, so our residential districts, our R1 is 30 feet height limitation, our R2 is 35 feet. Typically what I've seen, the 3 stories are around 30 feet. Typically around the floor. And then downtown, I think the tallest building we have in Newburgh is the Friends View, the new Friends View in University Village, which is 5. So that's the tallest building we have currently.
Is that the one across from the pool?
So it's across from the George Fox
Bolt
Park
Okay.
football. That's why I could probably describe it to you.
Oh, yes, yes. Okay. That just got me. Okay.
So the concern with height restrictions is not so much aesthetics, it's more neighbors. So like if somebody has a 5-story
Absolutely.
next to somebody and they're looking right down into their yard, and it's like, you know, a little weird. So maybe that instead of a height restriction, you could have, you know, some sort of restriction about windows on that side abutting the residential, maybe.
I wonder how that would impact like just general safety and fire code, though. It'd be hard to like put a restriction on that if it could butt up against fire code.
One of the things that's here is that the height is limited on that side closest to where the abutter is.
Residential.
Becomes a question of, is that good enough in softening that height restriction on that edge? And so maybe abutting's not the right word, even though that's what we use now for other things. Is there something else, or does it need to be softened further? What we tried to do was be consistent.
How wide
with-
is the alley?
Can I clarify that? So I think if you did want to do the alley, it might be 12 feet. I don't, Brett's still here. One thing you could do, we'll find that off-street parking section. Wrong way. So what you could do on the height limitation is basically what it says for the off-street parking. It says unless abutting or across, it should say an alley from a residential district. So, and that would limit it to the residential height limit for the first 50 feet, which the first 50 feet, that would be abutting the alley.
That seems fine.
So
I like that, because it's kind of using existing verbiage.
Yeah, without having, I was gonna suggest putting in like 20 feet, but
So,
same.
yeah, so it would just change. So on that bottom one, you see the maximum building, it says unless abutting residential, abutting or across an alley from residential district. Then,
Yeah.
then the 50 feet from the abutting boundary would
Anybody
apply.
have any issue with that verbiage?
I think as we've learned, the more simple and consistent things are made, the easier it is to absorb and maintain. So I think that seems like a very reasonable approach to make sure that the residents in the immediate vicinity don't feel like people are kind of looking down. So that means it'd have to be 50 feet back, and you'd have to be farther away from the residential side before you can go like higher. Am I interpreting that correctly?
You are, so that
Okay.
first 50 feet from that abutting boundary would be limited.
Excuse me.
Residential
Yeah.
height limit, there, I believe it's R2 down there, so 35-foot height limit. And for that first 50 feet.
I like that. I did too have a question once we are past this. But I like that. That seems like a good rule.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead and ask your question.
It was okay. I feel like I was kind of maybe playing off of what Jason already posed earlier. I love this idea, and I've been very excited to talk about it for a while, but looking through, we talked about having breweries and wineries and then crafts and then textiles. And I wonder if I'm just playing off of what Jason already asked. Is there some kind of like any component of like a non-compete or a cap so that it's not like 9 glass blowers in like a tasting room, or like 8 breweries come in and like then there's 1 metal workshop or something? Like, is there any set ratio to kind of make sure that it is a good cohesive?
I think the only industry you have to worry about something like that is pot or weed. And we've already got the regs in place to worry about that, so.
And could I ask if that's still a question, like, what would encourage us to select one industry over another? I mean, there are some that they're new, you're worried about whiplash, you don't want that to happen, but whether it's coffee shops or wineries or breweries, to some extent, the economy is going to regulate that for you, because you'll hit a set. Now, there are some potentially undesirable consequences if you're the only game in town that offers retail marijuana or something like that. All the other cities in your county don't, then all of a sudden you could get it consolidated because there's a kind of a anomaly, but that's not the case in this.
So the thing with the marijuana stuff is when all that stuff was going in, it was basically like a gold rush, you know, because there's so much money in that stuff and it's all cash. And, you know, Oregon had just opened up, and every city in the state just about was getting flooded with, you know, applications. And it's like you didn't want to go down Main Street or 99 and have it nothing but green all the way down, because that's what would have happened if we didn't do something about it. So.
And Clay, to clarify, I'm not necessarily proposing a ratio, because that could be very difficult to both uphold and sort of predict. The purpose behind my question effectively is that I'm looking at what we more typically deal with, which is a vacation rental situation. And then we get a lot of pressure to not approve it, although they're perfectly viable because we're getting a little bogged down in it. And there are too many is changing the dynamic. So I was just kind of trying to think a step or two ahead. It's like, is there anything we can do to make sure that it does become our end goal versus just like, oh yeah, vacation rental, totally, buy with the keeps with the property, keep it forever. That's fine. It's like that seems to have gotten to a point where we now need to pull it back, and it's making it difficult, and it's causing, again, consternation amongst the community. I'm just trying to think, is there something that we should be taking into consideration at this point where something could start to get away from us, where it's like, oh, it's all vacation rentals, or it's 9 glass blowers or something. I'm just trying to think of anything we might want to take into consideration now that would be helpful, that we don't have to pull back on in the future, but that we just kind of set forward now.
Sure. That's actually very helpful, because if you think about it, with some of the tactics that were used in vacation rentals might be tactics on, is there a problem that needs solving?
Mhm.
What we're doing here with this new zoning district, since it's really just a hybridization of commercial and industrial, we maybe ask ourselves, is there something that we think is going to rush into that vacuum that hasn't been there before? But most of the only new use that's proposed, as far as uses that could suddenly occupy in this space that don't already operate in the downtown district or in the industrial district that's nearby, is really the new one that it creates, which is this craft industrial, which I think is your point. But it is intended to be pretty broad. But if you look at the definition of that special use chapter, and anything kind of strikes you as this could go too far, then, I mean, I think that we'd be happy to hear that.
Is there a slide on that, just so I have visual? But no, not particularly. I don't have anything in the back of my mind. I just kind of wanted to pose that in case anyone could think of it, because I can't. But it seems so much easier in my mind to build at least a loose structure than try and throw it up once people have already moved in effectively.
Just thinking about it, I think the market include anything like that, because the thing with vacation rentals is it's so easy to take that and turn it into, take that, meaning your house, and turn it into something that makes money, because that's what they're basically trying to do. And with industrial or commercial, it's like, okay, you've got to have a cash outlay, you got to have a business plan, you got to go through it, takes effort, it's gonna time. It's not something that somebody who's out of the community can just come in and just buy something up and put in
No.
thing and have it happen. I'm trying to think of the only thing that could do that kind of a thing is like franchises, like, random, I don't know, Quiznos or something, or big box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Box could ever go in there. So,
Like if I'm being totally honest, the development across from the hospital and all the retail space that's gone in is so hyper commercial to me, and I would have preferred to see that be more independent businesses and not ones that are in any town in the state. And
part of the reason that all happened too is because the plan changed for the property owner so many times.
I know.
Going to be like a Target or a Walmart or something, and then that fell through, and then they were trying to do more residential, and then they had to change it with everything, and the property owners were basically losing their butts on the whole thing because of development costs and having to shift gears, applications. I mean, that stuff adds up really fast, and so they were just trying to get anything in, I think, so they could get out of finally
be done with it. Interesting. So, I mean, we're not necessarily talking at that stage yet. This is from a city perspective and how to rezone it. So it's not like there's not a particular.
It's a very different thing because everything's
yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lots in the whole area, I think.
I mean, well, now Papa Murphy's, which hilariously wasn't for some reason. Even the restaurants, other than Papa Murphy's, the restaurants are it got raised. That's super small.
Yeah, there's really only one greenfield development site over there. So pretty much anything else is going to be redevelopment in this area.
I'm surprised
And
nobody thought that, actually. It's been open for ever.
And sorry, it's getting late. Does every craft location have to have that retail component? Is that part of it, or can they be industrial crafting with no retail component?
So if they're doing it, it's 25% at 1,000 square feet. There
Has to be
is allowed light manufacturing, I believe, in the district. So theoretically, maybe, depending what they're doing.
but the point is the emphasis is that it is partially retail.
That, yes, that'd be the emphasis. And let me go back. I did want to make one other clarification note. There was, in the off-street parking standards, if they were to need to do that when they're butting the residential cross an alley, the industrial types should include the M5 for 1 per 500 square feet of gross floor area. So it's not in there. It was intended to be. That'll be fixed before your hearing.
Okay.
The light manufacturing, go back to my page here. I have a table. I think I just have the residential table, yeah. So. Craft. Keep going down. Nope, here it is. So light manufacturing would still be a permitted use in the craft industrial district. And if you give me a second, I can tell you what our current definition is for that.
Just doing an internet check. I didn't freeze out here, did I?
Nope, you're good.
Good. Okay. Okay. I seem to be in the worst room of the house and it keeps cutting in and out. So
Good. So
excuse me.
our light manufacturing category involves manufacturing, processing, fabrication, packaging, or assembly of goods. Types of firms are involved in secondary processing, assembly of materials, components into finished products, generally for the wholesale market, for transfer to other plants, or to order for firms or consumers. External impact from the uses is generally less than heavy manufacturing. The outdoor storage and processing of goods and materials is less than 10% of the site. Transportation needs are often met by trucks. Goods are generally not displayed or sold on site, but if so, there is subordinate part of sales. Relatively few customers come to manufacturing site, typically fewer than 5 per day for 1,000 square feet of floor areas. This one, I think the accessory uses talks about the retail sales of goods produced on site, provided the floor area divided to retail sales is small, less than 10% of the floor area up to 2,000 square feet, where the craft industrial has it 25% with a minimum of 1,000 square feet. And it's something that we definitely could look at if you guys wanted to get rid of the light manufacturing in that category, and basically it would just move into that craft industrial would only be allowed. It's something we can definitely look at, because I could see that being confusing to the developers or planning commission.
And the exhibits that were included in the packet includes full text of all this, including the entire use table. So you can really take a look at those, because there are a number of uses that are commercial in nature also that would be allowed in C3 that are also allowed in M5. Similar to, there's a number of uses that are allowed in M2 that are industrial in nature and are allowed in M5 too. So it's, again, trying to do that hybridization.
I think all that stuff's fine.
I'm really excited. I've been very, very excited to see this come up. So this is going to be so cool.
Well, it's kind of like fishing. You can only put out the bait. You got to have somebody show up and actually do it.
Right. I keep trying to, I like to plan and I keep trying to think of a way to like get ahead of it. But it's like, yeah, maybe we just got to let it grow.
If you as commissioners review this between now and the next hearing on this, you're welcome to send your written comments to Jeremiah before the hearing, and they'll be in the agenda packet. That way your fellow commissioners get to see them too. as long as they come in on the publication schedule, so we can get them in. So,
I was just gonna say the same thing. So if you have further comments on it, feel free to send them to me.
Okay.
The email, make sure you don't create a serial meeting though, and send it to your fellow commissioners. So just a reminder. And that would be included in the packet, that would come back to you for hearing in November.
And Jeremiah, do we address, you said height and alley? Do we discuss alley?
Yes.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, you're good on both?
I would make that change to include the building height to include across the alley. So
Okay,
have that-
okay.
That first 50 feet would be restricted to the residential height limit.
Cool, cool, cool. Love it. Love it.
If that's, I think we got that pretty well handled, so that's the end of the legislative session. Or the work session, excuse me. And moving on to items from staff.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Thanks, Commissioner Quinn, and thanks to Commissioner Dale being on the commission for so long that this project's come back full circle.
Whoop, whoop.
all right, enough poking fun at the chair
I'm
for
trying.
tenure. Appreciated.
I'm trying to remember a Grandpa Simpson joke, but I can't.
So,
That in of itself is the perfect joke.
I will keep the items from staff as short as I can. So the forward-looking calendar should be relatively updated. One of the things I wanted to keep in mind is that we do have a couple of items coming forward. We have the joint city council planning commission session. I hope that planning commissioners will make it for that. That should be a good one because I know that you'll be able to share some of the expertise from actually hearing from applicants, hearing from the public, and that's something that the city council doesn't get to hear that often. So
It's
that's
already in my
something-
phone.
It could be beneficial. And then we've also got the code maintenance work sessions and hearing coming up too, that'll be coming up in a few months. That's something that Scott Siegel, our community development director, is leading. And so that's really, you think about, you take your car to get a tune-up, keep your tools clean, all this stuff. We use this development code all the time. It is a tool that we use. And so we have things that we find over time that we look at. One of the things that I don't know the origin of is this list on our forward-looking calendar. It says other items from prior discussion with the planning commission. So if there are things that you have been burning to bring up that are not a major policy change, but they're a fixing what we have for clarification, for restructuring, for something like that, that it's just a technical issue that you as a user want to fix, that's an appropriate time for those sorts of things. Because
I have a
don't-
feeling Commissioner Wright might have an item or two for that.
Seems possible.
Yeah.
But be open to anyone. But one of the things we'll do when we talk about that is the purpose. We're not trying to revamp all of the codes and all of the policies. We're just trying to tune up the vehicle. So that's what we'll be doing on that one. And so that's really the forward-looking calendar and some of the items associated with that one. One of the other, and then the other is the memo that I had sent out that I try and give you guys kind of a summary of things that are coming up or things that have happened recently I think you might be interested in. So on that, I highlighted the vacation rental regulations. Again, that's the joint work session. Also, we have a fair bit of outreach that's going to be happening in November. You'll probably see that on the city's social media. One of the things I would ask is our planning commissioners who deal with short-term rentals, tell people in your networks to go to this stuff or to participate in some way. You are people who have a better understanding than everyone, and you probably know other people in town. So all we're asking is for you to help people know about it. And so if you could help give us a boost, let people know, we'd really appreciate it. And so that would be wonderful. And then the other one is also outreach related. And so early November, I think, and it's taken off, but it's probably going to be November 13th is the date. Is we're going to have an HB 2006 workshop regarding rent burdened households. So that's something that we're required to do by the state. And we're trying to make it more than just a box checking exercise. We actually want to learn things about the situation that people deal with here with rent burden. And that's when you're paying an inappropriately high amount of your monthly income goes directly to your rent, typically when it's over 30%. So we have just over 25%, I believe, of our population that rents pays over that threshold. And so we're one of the communities that has been asked to participate in this so we can gather information and keep people educated. So we're trying to do that. We're trying to get the developer community to come to this. We're trying to get the affordable housing community to come to this. And in the past, we've also talked to the people that work or are in the unhoused community to participate in this too. So we're going to have this at the, I believe, at the public library. That's the intent. We also want to make it an inviting space. Not that our local police station isn't inviting, but we're going to try and have it somewhere that seems extra friendly. So that's kind of what we're going for. So again, if you have the opportunity, when you see any of these announcements come out and you'd be willing to share it with your networks or people you think might be interested that we don't know, please do so. It really does mean a lot. And then the last thing I wanted to share, Commissioner Quinn, you're not in here, so these papers that I'm waving, you don't care as much about, but oh, well, there you go. Faye says you're already signed up, so maybe you do care, but we
Whoop, whoop.
couple of training opportunities for planning commissioners. We do have budget for planning commissioners to participate in these trainings. And anytime we have an opportunity for you to participate in something that is not you learning at the dais, we rather do that. So these trainings can be really helpful for you because it's something we want to make sure that all of you have the opportunity to learn and then bring that back to these hearing settings to feel comfortable and feel like you're doing a good job making decisions on behalf of the community.
Are those the events like the 1st and 2nd or 2nd and 3rd of November? Is that
One is November 1st and one is on
right?
November.
Got it.
So if you haven't done those before, I'd recommend considering doing. They're facilitated by folks that have been in the planning industry for a long time. Each day's got slightly different topics. One is on Oregon planning procedures and one is kind of it's just called Planning in Oregon. So I think it's a more holistic view. So if you look at the description for each of those, they have slightly different focus areas and they're not too far away. They're both over in Woodburn. So.
And I would really like to know if you want to go or not by next week, so I can get everybody scheduled. So.
Yes, that would be another good part. If you do want to go, reach out directly to Faye. She'll get you registered for it and make sure we can, but do give her the time to get you registered in time. So
Thank you, Faye.
I'm just going to turn, since I've got James and Jeremiah here in the office. Anything from you, Jeremiah? Anything from you, James? All right, that's it from staff.
I got something.
Oh, never mind. Sorry.
Please, for those of you who need to re-up your membership, or not membership, your planning, being a commissioner, please do so. You know who you are. Well, right now it's only one person, 2 people, actually. You're up December 31st, and we really would like to see you back. And Mike Griffiths is no longer on the commission. He has resigned because he moved out of the city.
Oh.
So.
He did share that he had appreciated the experience on the planning commission, and it had to do with where his legal residency is, but he is still involved in the community, so he'll still be around. And he's still.
Where did he move to?
He still has his house here in Newburgh, but I honestly don't know. I didn't get all
Spending
the
his
details.
summers in Cancun or something?
No, I believe he said Washington, but
Oh.
you should ask him. I imagine he's over at he's around. But
Yeah.
he's in town. Town's not that big. Track Mike down. I'm sure he'd be happy to do it. But since I almost forgot to say that he had stepped off the commission, I would like to say, in case he's listening, that his service is really appreciated. All of your services are very appreciated. You guys spend a lot of time into this, so thank you.
And if you need any help with re-signing up, just give me a holler.
Good.
That's it from staff.
All right, thank you. Any items from commissioners? Commissioner Quinn, anything?
Nope, just thanks. I appreciate it. This was a long but fun one. I've been wanting to talk about these for a while. Sorry I wasn't there physically, but thank you for everybody.
Okay, well, very good. And that'll do it. Thank you very much, and we are adjourned.